Well, good afternoon. It is 12 o'clock on a Thursday on a beautiful sunny day where we are. Hope you guys are having the same. This is our webinar 2026, the year of impersonation, how AI has changed cybercrime, and it's changed it a lot, and what you can do about it. So let's just get to some housekeeping before we dive in. Now, we do love as audience participation. We love ourselves some questions. So we have a Q&A button. Please use it. Every question is a great question. And I think we have the chat working. So chime in there with feedback and observations, or just say hi. You will all get a copy of the recording. Absolutely, you will. Everyone who attends will get a link. And we will also provide additional resources for you as we go along. Okay, let's move to some intros. So I am joined today by the usual suspects, Farzon and Forrest, who have both been in tech long enough to remember when the biggest cybersecurity threat was someone stealing your laptop. And guys, those were simpler times for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Farzon is 182's founder and CEO and the visionary behind how we're approaching AI with our clients. And a little known fact about Farzon back in the 90s, he was at the time the youngest person in the world mind, to earn the CNE certification, which tells you just how long he's been living in the world of enterprise technology. We're also joined by Forrest, our VP of Client Services, who leads the team responsible for implementing and supporting the technology environments that our clients rely on every day. And I'm Lou. And before joining 182, I spent about 15 years at global technology companies. And today I head up marketing and operations at 182. So I'm going to be chiming in. I'll also be your guide, keeping things moving and making sure we get to your questions. For those of us who are unfamiliar with 182, we are a strategic IT partner for small and mid-sized businesses, especially in regulated industries like legal and accounting. And our goal is really simple: to help firms simplify technology, tighten workflows, and make sure that their tools actually support the business rather than slow it down. Okay, so let's get to the agenda. Here's what we're covering today. We're going to talk about the big shift and why everything has changed so much in the past 12 months, and it has changed dramatically. And then we want to give you some examples of what this means for you and your business. We're going to go through some compliance where not acknowledging some of these changes can break the security in your firm. We're also going to give you, we're not just here to scare you, we're also going to give you a game plan and 5 things that you can do right this week and start this week to help keep you more secure. And hopefully we're going to have some great questions at the end of this. So let's dive right in.
Thanks, Leo, for that great introduction there. So before we get into specific attacks, it's important to understand what has fundamentally changed in cybersecurity. For decades, security is about keeping people out of your systems, like with firewalls, strong passwords, encryption. Everything was designed to block unauthorized access. But today, most breaches don't start with hacking. They start with believing that an email really came from your partner, believing that the voice on the phone is really your CFO or CEO, believing that the person on the Zoom call you're with is really who they say that they are. That's the shift. AI has removed the friction from impersonation. Writing a convincing email used to take time and skill. Cloning a voice required specialized equipment, and faking a video call sounded like science fiction. Today, an attacker with a laptop and a $20 subscription can do all 3 before you know it. They don't need to be an expert, don't need to be a hacker anymore. They just need access to tools, and that changes the math on every security investment you've ever made.
Absolutely. And I think probably most people here at this point have at least experienced, having, AI, ChatGPT or Copilot or something help you rewrite an email. I know I do that a lot.
Yeah, same.
It's really good. It's not like it used to be where, it was making weird grammar choices, and now it's smooth, and it seems like a person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really figures it out.
Okay, so um, there's a couple examples out there of incidents that have happened that were the sort of the first real public cases that really kind of exemplified what we're talking about here. So the first one is a architecture and design firm based out of the UK. And what happened here is that an employee was brought into a video conference meeting. And when they got in there, the CFO was there and some other executives and coworkers. Familiar faces, familiar voices, lips were syncing up. Everything looked great. The end result of that is that this person transferred $25.6 million to fraudulent accounts over 15 transactions.
Yikes.
And this is back in 2024, right? So things are much more sophisticated. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but in terms of AI, it was a lifetime ago.
Yeah, that's like decades.
Yeah. So, and everybody thought, oh, geez, that's intense, but maybe that's an anomaly. Then there was another very public one out of Singapore, and it was the same exact thing. Got a call on WhatsApp. Hey, need you to join this meeting. Director of finance joined the meeting. CFO is there. Legal was there. Other leadership was there. And this person ended up transferring just a little bit short of $500,000 based on that meeting. And another interesting part about this is that this wasn't actually even flagged internally at the company until a second request for $1.4 million was made. And then it started ringing all the bells, right? So, it just shows how clever these people are.
Yeah,
right?
it's not small change, huh?
Yeah, and like Farzon was saying, decades ago and a lifetime ago, 2024 in terms of AI. The other thing to think about here is that in the tools that it took to create this and be successful with this in 2024 were phenomenally more expensive, phenomenally more complicated, and phenomenally less accessible than they are today.
Yeah.
Today, these kind of tools, they're everywhere, they're inexpensive, and they're practically intuitive. So
yeah, things are accelerating.
Yeah, for sure.
They really are. So to understand why things are these impersonation attacks are accelerating so quickly, we like to think of it as the three waves. So each wave removed another signal that humans have traditionally relied on to figure out if someone was real or not. First wave was written impersonation. For years, one of the easiest ways to spot a phishing email was poor writing. Like the bad grammar, awkward phrasing,
Bad
strange,
spelling.
strange tone and punctuation. It was pretty easy to see. But today, attackers can generate like absolutely perfect written messages instantly. They can mimic tone, structure, even the writing style of someone inside your organization. That's why many employees say that emails they see today look completely legitimate. They're saying that over 80% of phishing emails are AI generated, and AI written phishing emails achieve a 50% increase in compared to traditional phishing. In other words, people are over 4 times more likely to engage with them. It's a big reason why business email compromise alone accounted for over 3 billion in losses last year. Email isn't just a noise anymore, it's an entry point. Yeah. The second wave is voice impersonation. Humans naturally trust a familiar voice. The person on the phone sounds like your CFO, your boss, a senior partner, most people assume it's real, but AI can now clone like in just a few seconds of hearing your audio. Public recordings, podcasts, webinars, social media videos, webinars like this one right here provide enough material to create a realistic voice model. And the
I
tools
should
needed to
just
do
say
this.
though that we are real today. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 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 So, and the tools needed these days are really inexpensive and easily available, trivial. So researchers have found like 80% of AI cloned voices bypass bank grade voice authentication. And as a result, many financial institutions are now reconsidering voice biometrics entirely. At the same time, voice phishing attacks increased by more than 500% last year. And then the third wave, the hardest one, to digest, I think, at least it is for me, is video impersonation. For a long time, we believed that seeing someone on a screen meant they were actually there. But AI can now generate realistic faces and voices in real time during a video meeting. That means attackers can simulate executives, colleagues, even in like where they are, their environment, they look completely legitimate, including what appear to be normal Zoom or Teams calls. The
Yeah.
real danger comes when these techniques are combined.
Yep.
Attacker might start with an email to establish context and then follow up with a phone call, and then finally move into a Zoom conversation to what appears to be legitimate. And by that point, the employee believes they're interacting with the real colleague, and that's how impersonation becomes financial fraud.
Right. Yeah, this isn't like the scripted video, the AI video where, it was written out, somebody's acting, there's no external stimulus. This is real-time impression. Cameras on somebody, person saying the thing. It's that CFO, that whoever is being impersonated real time. Words are being fed, they're being said in that person's face, facial movements, hands,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And this isn't really happening in isolation like the one in 2024. That was pretty unique at the time. Now it's really common. They're chaining them together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really common now. Like it starts as an email, becomes voice, and then it's a video conversation, and then the money's gone.
Yeah. So let's get to why small businesses are more at risk for this.
Yeah. So, at small businesses, we kind of pride ourselves on being nimble. There's less of us to do more things. So, it kind of starts with the trust, right? So we're used to, but leadership, taking direction from leadership. Employees are used to like taking that, doing that. That's a normal thing. It's a trusted process within the company. We're acting on client requests. We're acting on vendor requests. These are just normal things that we do, and it's a trusted relationship, right? And then also because we're small, usually there's a few people that have a lot of financial control. Okay, so it's not like there's a lot of checks and balances. Like one person can send money without somebody else double checking it, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an ideal target right there. The other thing is that, we have these structured workflows, right? So, wires, our approvals, lots of things that have very predictable patterns. The thing with predictable patterns is that once we start getting, we're head down, we're used to that, tweaking it a little bit can sometimes just go unnoticed. So, it becomes very easy to imitate things.
And I think a lot of the patterns and workflows are very similar across a lot of companies. Some of these processes aren't unique, so it's quite often easy, even if you're not sure, to guess what that workflow and process might be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this isn't a fault of small business. I mean, we are doing things quote unquote right, but it is time to take a pause, reevaluate, and consider some extra controls.
Yeah. So let's talk about where this information is coming from. So before attackers send the first message, they're usually spending time doing reconnaissance, and most of what they need is publicly available. I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and he said, "Oh, you don't hear much about viruses anymore." And I was like, "Well, you don't, but that's because hackers don't need to break in to your system anymore. They just need to have you open the door for them, and they can do that by imitating and using publicly available information." Um, so I'm going to give you some examples about that because I've also spoken to people say, "Oh, there's not that much out there. I don't use social media that much. We're not on LinkedIn that much." But over time, these things build up. You've got LinkedIn, your website, press releases, court filings, job posting, even Glassdoor and Google reviews. And so all of that's been available for a really long time. But it would take a skilled social engineer days of manual research to pull all of that information together. And now that we have AI on the scene, this can be done in seconds. And so by the time you get a message or a call, the attacker already understands how your organization operates. And so let me show you what they learn. Let me tell you what they learn from all of these systems. So LinkedIn, they can get an org chart from that. They can understand who handles accounts payable, who joined, who just left, and new hires in particular are prime targets because they haven't internalized those protocols yet. And recent departures create gaps. So sometimes that succession planning isn't quite there, and hackers know how to exploit that. Websites can give partner headshots that can lean into deep fake training data, email naming conventions, practice areas, client types. Press releases have pending deals, transaction sizes, closing timelines, and job postings in particular. You wouldn't think this, but job postings in particular are another goldmine. They can often list the software platforms a firm uses, and sometimes even describe how approvals or workflows operate, who they're going to report into. And Glassdoor reviews also reveal or can reveal internal dynamics or pressure points that attackers can exploit. And none of this information is secret. And that's the
Yeah.
whole point, right?
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, when Lou mentioned, the prior to AI making this easily accessible and the search and compilation of all this data easy, it would take somebody a while, and so they would try to pick who they thought were valuable targets, right? But with this current state, and it's going to continue this way, we're all targets because getting at the information is quick and easy.
Yeah.
And so, why not? They just want to get us all.
Yeah. And so, once they know your organization, they can borrow your name. And your name is your reputation, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So, this one really touches me deeply. Sit with this for a minute. Your name, your brand, your professional credibility is being used as a weapon against you from the people you trust the most. And being in small business, that's everything. That's what our businesses are built upon, is that trust in the relationships. We're seeing attacks where AI generated attorney headshots are paired with stolen bar registration and create completely convincing lawyer profiles. We're seeing invoices sent from domains that look almost identical to the firm's real domain, like one letter off or a dot in a different place. Because the message appears to come from your office, clients act on it. And this is what makes impersonation different. Attackers impersonate you to target your clients, and your clients to target you. They move back and forth across the trust boundary. I can give you an example. Last week, I was at a conference. We were an exhibitor there. And one of the things we did was we brought personalized dark web reports for people's companies. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Hey, thank you for the report, but I have never logged on to all these sites where the dark web report showed it was, they were on the dark web." And I looked at it for a minute because it was definitely a different report than I'm used to seeing. And then it dawned on me, somebody's impersonating this guy. It ended up being one of the most one of the worst reports I'd ever seen. I mean, that's the scary stuff, is when someone's trying to be you and they're trying to get at your clients or your vendors or your loved ones. Um, I don't know what this particular person's why someone was trying to impersonate them, but it's generally one of those, and that makes it pretty serious. So it used to be they're trying to do something at you, the hackers.
Mhm.
But now with impersonation, they're trying to do something that happens through your firm and the trust you've built over years, sometimes decades.
Yep.
And that's their most effective tool. And this isn't theoretical. Generative AI impersonation scams increased almost 500% in the past year, and they're becoming routine. So let me give you a few scenarios that we see regularly. None of them start with anything that feels obviously suspicious. Like, for example, a partner sends a Teams message to someone in finance. I need you to handle something quickly, quietly. It's confidential. A wire goes out the same day it wasn't the partner. The attacker had compromised the account and used the partner's normal communication style to make the request seem routine. Another example would be like a voicemail arrives at almost 5 o'clock on a Friday. Everybody wants to get out the door. It sounds like a client CFO asking to change wire instructions for a transaction that's closing on Monday morning. The voice sounds right, and because it's a clone generated from a short recording that was publicly available online, and the timing added pressure, the voice adds trust. The combination is extremely effective. And another example, a vendor invoice arrives by email. It looks exactly the same as every other invoice, same logo, same line items. The only difference is the bank account number. And this one was caught, but only because someone in accounts payable called the vendor directly, and that single call stopped the loss. And here's what all three of those attacks have in common. They looked completely normal. Nothing about it felt unusual. That's why it worked. And they didn't trigger a firewall. They didn't trip an antivirus software. They didn't get flagged as spam. They succeeded, or nearly succeeded, because they blended into everyday business. Boring is important, and that's where trust lives.
Mm-hmm.
So tools versus strategy here. So look, a lot of people are, making investments today. I have made investments in security tools. You still need those. Those are important. Those are protecting you. But here's the problem. All the attacks that we just talked about bypassed those controls, all of them. Okay. Not because the tools are bad or they failed, but because they're designed to answer a different question, right? So what's missing is process and protocols and training, right? So protocols of verification, decision processes. The training is a different training, right? It's got to be your role based, and it's got to be very specific for threat on that role, right? And then out of band confirmation, right?
Yeah.
So we need a way to confirm that, hey, this is actually who they say they are, and it's from a known good scenario. Okay, so the security tools are going to protect your systems, they're going to protect your data. The verification, where it comes into protecting the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
And
All right.
next slide.
Yeah. So let me connect it to something every managing partner in the room cares about. Well, cares about, doesn't care about, and that's
Well,
compliance.
you should care.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Really important.
annoying but real. Ask yourself two questions. First, how does your firm actually verify that a financial request is real? Is that written down? And second, the new staff member join next month. Would they know the protocol or would they be learning it by watching everyone else? Every framework, doesn't matter which one you have to adhere to, assumes one thing, that you can reliably verify who you're communicating with. That's the foundation, and that's the foundation right now is cracking. Everything we relied on in the past isn't working. And a cloned voice can authorize a wire transfer when someone can spoof your domain and can deliver instructions that look identical to the real thing. The identity assumption that your entire compliance posture depends on no longer holds. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. If your approval process isn't documented, it lives as institutional knowledge rather than written policy.
Mm-hmm.
It won't survive an audit and certainly won't survive litigation. The firms that will navigate this well aren't the ones with the most security tools. They're the ones that recognize early that this process gaps are compliance gaps and close them before an auditor or attacker found them first.
Okay, let's take a breather. That is a lot, right? There's a lot going on, and it's only going to exacerbate. And again, we don't want to scare you, or put the fear into you, but you should just have enough fear, and be aware so that you have the information at hand to make some changes. So look, that's exactly where we're going next. What can you do to prevent this impersonation?
Yeah. Surprisingly, not that difficult. First thing you need to do is you need to implement DMARC. Don't worry about it. Yes, it's another five-letter acronym, but basically, this is a technology that allows you to tell the internet who you are and everything that can send email as you. And it prevents other people from being able to send email as you. I mean, they can send it, but basically everybody on the internet subscribes to this DMARC system. And so they'll get flagged as illegitimate immediately.
And
And you,
because I'm not very good with acronyms, and I'm just it stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance.
yeah,
I had
yeah.
to write that down. So
Yeah, so but it's a really important thing. You'd be surprised how many people don't have it in the reject position. And I can tell you it usually has to do with productivity. A lot of small businesses, they go to maybe their IT people told them they needed to do it and they went to do it and suddenly their email started bouncing.
Farzan, let me just stop you a sec. We just lost you a little bit on the sound, and very quiet. And this is important stuff we're going over.
Okay. Do I sound better now?
Well, I'm able to hear you, but you're a little bit quieter than before.
Okay. I haven't done anything.
There we go.
Zoom
Now it's
is
come back.
being a
There
little
we
bit
go.
weird today.
See, now you know that this isn't fake, because if it was, we wouldn't have these little glitches when we're live. So
Yeah, this
it's
is
all part of
definitely
the
not
webinar
AI.
charm, right?
Well, Forrest, perhaps you could take over here on this part.
We've got you now, Farzan.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So, nevertheless, DMARC's really important. It basically is a way to tell the internet who is you. And yes, it can be a little bit something to set up, but worth doing. You need to do it. And it's getting critically important.
Yeah.
So the next thing is multi-factor authentication. I'm sure by now everybody here has heard that so many times over and over again. But the conversation can't stop. It started with text messaging. People started using their phones. What I can tell you is most of these technologies can be spoofed. You have to use a stronger version of multi-factor authentication for the really critical stuff. We call it FIDO2. It's not something that can be stolen easily, but nevertheless, the way you do multi-factor authentication can be stolen, believe it or not. It's not foolproof at all. And using stronger multi-factor authentication for the stuff that really matters is worth the extra steps it takes. So think of it this way. Standard MFA is a seatbelt and necessary, helpful, and reduces harm. But phishing-resistant MFA is the airbag. It's like the difference between some protection and design for impact protection.
Yeah. So that's the technology defense strategy. Let's move on to the next steps, which is the verification defense strategy, the human element in this. And the first one is training, but not the kind most firms are doing today. Most organizations will run annual security training to check a compliance box. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but a lot of the times that can be the case. Someone watches a video, answers a few questions, and moves on. But the problem is that that type of training rarely changes behavior, right? What actually works is regular and realistic simulations. So, for example, simulated phishing emails. And I know that they happen a lot. We had somebody at a recent conference complaining about how phishing heavy it was. But it's really necessary. Impersonation attempts or suspicious messages. Train your staff around these and do some simulated ones. The other key change is making the training role specific. So your accounts payable team should practice scenarios involving wire transfer, something that is specific to them. Reception staff, maybe they're practicing identifying IT help desk impersonations, and leadership team may be understanding executive impersonation attempts. And so the training today needs to go beyond email. Because impersonation can live in all kinds of areas, Teams, messages, phone calls, voicemails, video meetings. And again, not trying to scare you with this, but the goal is to build a habit. So if something feels urgent, familiar, or unusual, just take a pause and verify.
Yeah, absolutely. So step 4, this is a low tech step, and that's why it works, right? So with AI impersonating voices, one of the things that we can do is come up with the code phrase, right? So maybe the finance staff and leadership, they have a code phrase between them, and if something important needs to happen, a wire needs to happen, a transaction needs to happen, the code phrase gets said, right? So, yeah. And if it doesn't happen. Very simple, cost no money.
Oh, and by the way, this code word should not be written down anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
You don't share that code word by email. You don't decide which code that code word needs to be set up verbally.
Yep.
Probably the one time where we encourage you to put that code word on a piece of paper rather than
well,
anywhere on the web, right?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but what I can tell you is we have technology. Some of our clients have it already, where you can share securely things like this code word in a way that it is safe to store. Mm-hmm. And it's very compliant as well.
Yeah. And it'll also do things like automatically rotate it, change it for you. So, they can't be memorized or passed along easily.
Just want to say, I'm not advocating for keeping code words and passwords on sticky notes and in pieces of paper, by the way. That's not what I was saying there.
Look, we don't have to overthink this, really.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
you don't need to do all this everywhere at once. You don't need to panic, but definitely take this seriously. You just got to start with your highest risk accounts.
Yeah,
that's real compromise causes the real damage.
Yeah,
a security key costs what, $25, right? So, anyways, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a short action checklist. Just practical steps at your firm, and it can realistically start implementing without creating a big old disruption. Most firms can implement these in about 30 days, no problem. Okay. So in the next 7 days, first, take a look, make sure you got DMARC going. If you don't know what that is, talk to your IT or give us a call. We'll help you out. Okay. And then right after that, make sure you have strong MFA, not the kind that's a text message, something that's stronger than that. Windows Hello is very strong. That's a good choice. And it's also something that's built into Windows, saves you money. Okay. In the next 30 days, then you should be implementing a firm policy, something where financial transactions must be verified through a callback to a known number. Have a process, practice that process. That single control starts the largest percentage of compromise attacks. And it's also worth establishing an identity verification protocol. So just think of these really simple things and they're low-tech solutions that really make a big impact. And finally, training. And so beyond just your, cybersecurity training that you get emailed to you and you take those courses and whatnot, you need to run exercises. Test your solution is what my father used to tell me. And so you have all these things in place. You have the policies and procedures. You've trained everybody, but you need to test it, do a fake scenario and see how the team does. And if they make a mistake, that's okay, because that's going to be the strongest learning they're going to have. But it won't be in a real transaction. And you'll be glad you've done the simulation.
And
So,
just lastly, of the 5 steps that we mentioned there, it's that last one, the fifth one, that is the most important one, the identity verification protocol. Because when everything else fails, that's really your last line of defense.
yeah.
And it's also doesn't cost anything except for time. The way you do it's important. You don't, you get an email that says, "Hey, change the bank number, the wire number. Here it is." You don't call the number in that email signature. You call the number that you've been talking to that person for the last 5 years on.
Yeah. And it's not on this slide, but I'm going to give you a bonus step that costs nothing. So take 30 seconds to Google yourself and your company and just spend a few minutes seeing what an attacker sees, because it's often the fastest way to understand your real exposure risk, since hackers rely really heavily on publicly available information, even right down to writing styles. You can find things like maybe a lookalike domain, a recently created profile, or inconsistencies in the information being used. And so it's not really a formal control, like the others we've discussed here, but it is a simple habit that can occasionally stop an impersonation attempt before it escalates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on to some questions, or guys, you anything else to add?
Well, look, I just want to leave everybody with one thought, right? We're all in small businesses and we all know it. Trust is our most valuable asset. That's it. And that's the problem, is that's exactly what the attackers are trying to exploit right now. So, impersonation's been around for a really long time. This isn't a new concept, but the part where AI is making it like a brand new concept.
Mm.
From the beginning of time, people have been trying to impersonate, but this is not like it was before. AI is essentially perfecting it, and it's just going to get worse. And it's scalable now and affordable and just practically undetectable. The firms that actually see to the other side of this are the ones who don't have the biggest security budgets, but rather they are the ones who implement a policy, train everybody, and practice the steps. These simple things that are basically low tech are basically the most powerful things you could do for a small business.
Absolutely.
So in this day and age, it's no longer, is this email malicious? The question is, how do we know this email is real? If your firm can answer that question for every wire transfer, every banking charge, every whatever sensitive request, you're ahead of 90% of the companies out there. Let's do questions now.
All right. So I don't see anything in the Q&A. However, we did have a couple of questions submitted in advance, so I'm going to get to those. First one here, is there a way to protect our Zoom meetings from AI impersonation? Really good question.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a really good one. To give everybody here perspective, we had over 100 impersonations, fake registrants to this webinar. Over 100, and they look real. And obviously, we've detected and got them all out. But what you can do, and you can do like we've done, you can actually make it so that there's settings on Zoom to protect from that impersonation where people can't just automatically, join your Zoom. They have to be authenticated to join. They have to be from the email address they registered with, like a working one. It's an
Yeah.
easy solution, and it solves 99% of the problems.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I have another question. So I'm going to paraphrase this one because it was a long one. But basically, trying to figure out the policies, it can feel like a lot, and getting everyone to sign off on them or roll those out effectively with training, it can feel overwhelming and figuring out where to start. So, how do we pull all of those policies together and roll that out?
Yeah. So, that I understand. I get it. And, if you're sitting on an island, you're trying to do this all yourself, um, it can feel daunting. I can say there's resources out there that help like that. Uh, you can reach out to us. We can help you with that. Uh, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. A lot of this is ready for you, and there's process and steps to complete that.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the tools. We can get you in the right place with that for sure.
And okay, so we did have one come in. How do you figure out if how do we figure out if our company's DMARC is correct or correctly set up?
Yeah, actually, we have something right on our website. We have this, if you go under our website, just on our homepage, there's a menu option called resources. And under there, you can click on domain checker. It's as simple as just putting in your domain name, like, abc.com, whatever your domain is, and click the button, and it will tell you how your DMARC's doing.
We just had, thank you for that, Farzan. Do you have a recommendation on a password manager?
Yeah.
I know which
Uh,
one I use, but
yeah. I mean, Forrest, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, we like one called MyGlue. Um, there's a few out there that are great. The MyGlue one is I think exceptional for what it is. And if that's something you're interested, in, you can reach out to me. I can give you more information on it. You can also, Google it online. But it's a good one because it does allow you to do a lot of the things that we were talking about here as well, as far as, rotating and sharing, within your company as well.
Yeah, if you're a client of ours, we have the solution for you, and it's integrated into everything you already have. It'll be easy peasy. And then there's a couple of good ones, especially if people are asking for personal, which you should have one for your personal life too. We like 1Password, and
that's
that's
the one I use. I really
yeah,
like that one.
yeah. 1Password is really good. It's super secure. And the other really strong one is Keeper Security. That's also very good. And the last one that we hear people using that we don't recommend is LastPass. That one has been unfortunately hacked a few times, and we try to stay away from the ones that have been hacked like that. So don't recommend that.
Great. So that brings us to the end of our Q&A. If you want to learn more, or if you'd like to speak to any of our experts, our information is up there on the screen. And on behalf of Farzon, Forrest, and me, we really appreciate you spending part of your day with us, and we are looking forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.